In many parts of Canada and virtually everywhere in BC, there is a serious lack of rental housing. The increasing demand means soaring prices, not only in major city centres, but also in rural and retirement communities. As prices increase, builders are incentivized to build new units for sale rather than for rent. The rising cost of housing and the lack of rental stock in BC is making it hard to attract and retain workers in high-demand regions such as Vancouver, Kelowna, and Victoria. With an estimated 1 million people moving to the Greater Vancouver region alone, upward pressure on prices will increase if supply of housing doesn't increase at a similar rate. By increasing capital cost allowance and eliminating the GST for rental housing units, the federal government can dramatically increase supply and profitability to both owners and developers of purpose-built rental housing. Would your government make changes to capital gains if invested in purpose-built rental properties?
As this is identified as an issue that is really important to this riding, as your MP, I would want to get these people together around the table in this sector and take this issue forward. Work with other colleagues, work with people at the provincial level, other MPs, Member of Parliament, to see what is happening across the province and across Canada. The Liberal Party has shown that we are concerned and we want to see our economy grow. I want to just quickly touch on two things that I'm very proud of in our own community that the Liberal government has done. One would be investing in the new National Housing Strategy. We now have a 4-story, 67-unit that's well underway on Webb Avenue that is invested just for low-income rentals. We also, together with the provincial government, invested over $7 million to make sure that Ruth and Naomi's was affordable housing for low-income mothers. We are doing what we can, and we will continue to do more and make sure that Canadians have affordable housing.
Thank you for the question. I think there's a multitude of things that the federal government can do to increase the housing supply. I think one of the things they should look at absolutely is the capital gains system, the disincentives that exist in the Income Tax Act to prevent that kind of investment. I think it needs to be looked at in totality, though. There are other things that are preventing the free market from getting into the rental market. One of them, I've talked to real estate agents in the community. They keep talking about the Liberal stress test, which is actually making it much harder for people to qualify for mortgages, which has a downward effect on the entire housing market. I had a housing roundtable with everyone from social housing advocates to developers to real estate agents to social service delivery folks, and everyone agreed that we need to have a whole of society approach to this. Really, the government can't solve the problem by itself. There is a need for social housing that will take off some pressure, but it's a very small portion of the population that benefits from that. If we don't have incentives for people to use the free market to buy their first home, and people to move into a bigger home and free up space along the whole continuum, all the way up to seniors going into assisted living facilities, you have to address the whole thing, or else those openings, the first-time home buyers won't be able to get into the market, and then you're not getting people moving through the continuum. So there's a lot that needs to be done. I think the market can solve a lot of these issues. The City of Chilliwack has done some innovative things recently by allowing basement suites and carriage homes, and allowing more homes, more population density, and I think that's going to be part of it. So the federal government has a role to play, but so do the other levels of government, and quite frankly, so does the market.
Yeah, as I've already said, we want to get rid of the capital gains outright. So as far as changing it, no, we want to get rid of it. And then on the issue, you also mentioned GST. We also want to get rid of the GST so that the provinces can basically raise their PSTs. And then when they control that, it would be harmonized already automatically, because they would be the only ones to control it. They would then be able to use the capital from that to invest in things like healthcare and education without holding out their hand to the federal government asking for more money on those things. This would also give them more control to shape it to their particular needs. When it comes to housing, the issues in British Columbia are very different from, say, the issues in Saskatchewan. So we don't want to try and, force a solution onto all the provinces. We want the provinces to have the flexibility to come up with their own solutions on a thing like that. The other thing that will help on the housing price is if we can bring in some extra controls and fine-tuning to our immigration policies. If we are bringing in huge numbers of individuals year after year, mostly going to Vancouver and Toronto, we can't assume that that's not one of the things that's driving up the cost of housing in those areas. So at some point we need to start having much more targeted immigration towards our economic needs and bring the numbers down. We want to reform the immigration system so it works better for all Canadians, including new Canadians.
One of the biggest drivers of unaffordability has been provincial government's reluctance to banning foreign ownership. This is driving up prices and cashing in on the inflated property transfer taxes. This has caused massive inflation in the housing market. We must not let foreign investors create any additional stress to an already overly competitive market. We need to create a market supply that is conducive to market affordability. The stress that has already been created, inflationary pressures in every aspect of the economy, including wages and building supplies. Using capital gains reductions is not going to satisfy a healthy market reduction in affordability. The benefit of capital gains is to the sole benefit of the seller of the capital investment, and not necessarily that of the purchaser, and especially to those who may have to borrow their down payment from old Aunt Ruth. The real solution for housing affordability will have to come from major government investment in simple housing affordability. This would include tiny homes, smaller condominiums, repurposed older buildings, cooperatives, and even mobile housing, as our current housing strategies are simply unsustainable. So if we can build an affordable housing unit that we can keep them in the realm of the provincial income tax assistance rates, we could actually be creating a capital investment with money that we're currently giving away now that has absolutely no return on investment. This would result in a practical infinity of new construction jobs and solve the housing crisis in a practical, pragmatic, and affordable way, alleviating stress on the economy by not having to overuse the resources of our social welfare and safety net systems.